Good day, folks, and thank you for joining us. Today we have, coming from all the way across the pond, Dr. Curly Moloney. Curly is a qualified doctor obtaining degrees from Oxford and Cambridge universities, where she was interested in conscious and subconscious brain activity. She afterwards joined the commercial world, founding the international executive search firm Moloney Search in 1994. Wanting to bring the insights of subconscious drivers to more people, in 2013, the Cambridge Code was born. Hosted by Cambridge University, the lengthy processes of scientific research and rigorous trialing began, and many years later, the algorithm was successfully launched. The team had succeeded in digitizing the experience of sitting with a psychologist. Now, many thousands of people have used the Cambridge Code and benefited from its insights and enjoyed this route to self-understanding. It has brought to people a sense of coming home, a sense of acceptance of who they really are, and given them the agency to make positive changes in their work and home life. Whoa. How are you doing today, Curly? Nice to have you here.
Absolute pleasure. Lovely to chat to you. And I hope it is not quite as cold as it is in London. But
well, it is a bit cold here. I don't know if it's as cold as it is in London, but it's cold enough for us to have snow on the ground, at least where I live.
Okay, that's more exciting than we have. It's just a little bit chilly. But no, thank you, Eldra, and a pleasure to join you today.
Well, again, thank you for being here. And when I heard about your work, specifically the Cambridge Code, and I looked at that and read a bit about breaking down basically how the brain works, how the mind works, what makes me, what motivates me. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because it feels similar to the work that we do here at Inside Circle.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, maybe I'll give you a bit of the history, Eldra, and you stop me if it gets dull. So I was hugely privileged to, I was a Northern girl, an Irish Liverpool lass who had the privilege to study at Oxford and then Cambridge universities. At Oxford, we spent a bit of time looking at how the mind works and subconscious activity, and do we even have a subconscious? You know, some people say we don't actually have one. And as medics, we looked at very scientifically how drugs interact with the brain, the sort of the neuropharmacology. Very, you know, after 6 years, I then decided to look at the commercial world. And in that world, I came across lots of psychometric tests that people use, and loads of people out there will have been put through numerical tests, verbal tests, what makes you tick tests. These things are all good, but I was quite surprised that they were all based on behaviors. So the behaviors that you exhibit, the things that you sort of show. And the clinical world I'd come from, we did look at behaviors, but automatically we always wanted to see what was driving you to behave in a certain way. So we weren't just interested in, you know, maybe a poor kid stopped eating and we'd see them in clinic, and, you know, they were only eating 6 crackers. Sure, as doctors we'd ask, you know, what time of day they took the crackers, you know, did they take all 6 at once, or was it 2, 2, 2? So we'd look at those behaviors. But what we would really want to do with those patients would be to say, what has driven that poor kid to only eat 6 crackers? What sits behind those behaviors? So when I was in the corporate world, I was so surprised. Gosh, we can do everything. But the one thing we didn't seem to have was an ability to automatically see what sits behind what makes you tick. The only way really to do that is sort of the preserve of the boardroom. So senior executives, chairman, chief execs, people who run corporates, often a lot of money is spent where they are analyzed by, you know, psychologists and psychotherapists, and that enables them to do better in their work and their life and to stride forward and be better leaders. Well, hey ho, what about everybody else? You know, if why doesn't everybody have the chance to have a look at, a snapshot of how their subconscious mind works. So that's what drove us, Eldra, and that passion of wanting to see if we could digitize the experience of sitting with a psychologist or a psychotherapist, so that it allowed people who didn't have the time or the money to have a look at their subconscious mind.
Okay, that is a whole lot, and it's very interesting. And so a question that comes to me is there a space, and is there a way that something like the Cambridge Code could be used in a correctional setting? Or if not in the correctional setting, in folks who have been identified as at risk? Maybe a person, say if I've had contact with law enforcement and it's deemed to be potentially dangerous, is this something that, potentially could be utilized to maybe help heal individuals who are at risk for either committing crimes, or folks who have committed crimes, to help them heal and, or, I'll use the word quote unquote rehabilitate?
Straight in with the toughies. It would have to be used in that context. You would need to. It's quite it's a light touch. It's quite a powerful tool. So although people have access to it, to make sure that it is used in the right way is very important. So if it was used in those settings, absolutely, because it holds a mirror up to your mind. It holds a mirror up to allow you, the individual, to have the agency to look and accept yourself, which can give you comfort, or to look at the mirror and say, well, actually, I'm going to change some things I can see. So always more insight is going to be good. And how that is utilized depends on, the circumstances. If that's used, with airline workers who, the people who might leave a spanner on the deck, but not confess that they've done it, and the health and safety aspect of a mine, or is a teacher, will they nurture the individuals they have with them? Can it say whether someone will reoffend? No, but can it show that they have the psychological adaptability to move forwards? Yes. Can it show whether someone has the capacity to reach their full potential? That can be because, you're a janitor in a building, but you might have the potential to absolutely step into that. And so uncovering hidden potential, hidden drive is a very special thing. And some people who offend don't realize how much they have to give and to offer. And showing them that can make a very big difference. Yeah. Also, maybe working with areas for example, some people might not have a lot of resilience. So they fall down into a hole and they find it more difficult to bounce back up. Well, the code can show what it is that stops them from bouncing back up. And once you know that, it really helps. So there's lots of ways it could be used. And in fact, our own prison and probation service have been working with us, looking at how it's used.
That is beautiful. And it so resonates with me and the work we do here at Inside Circle, because a lot of what we do is supporting folks in finding agency for themselves, and locating the resiliency that exists within them that they may not have tapped into, and creating a space for an individual to recognize and choose to embrace the potential that lies within them. So, everything that you speak about there resonates, tremendously to me, not just from the mental aspect, but from a spiritual and emotional aspect. So I truly appreciate that.
And, the thought, one of the reasons we started wanting to do this was because I thought everyone should, be able to have access to this. And that's also joyous when we see sometimes lists of people who are going forward, say for jobs, And it's the very obvious people who can interview really well, they're very confident, they know what to do. They look or feel in the same way as maybe their interviewer does. And some people, you know, are subconsciously aligned, but consciously very different. And what we wanted to say was, you know, don't interview people. Why don't you look at their subconscious alignments with you as an organization? And then we challenged people and said, so, you know, you're thinking of this person. Well, actually, this snapshot of this person shows, although they were quieter or didn't put themselves out there, look at the potential they have to step into all of their capacity to learn. Look at their ability to bring others with them on a journey. And it's shaken things up, which is fantastic. So it really helps on that bias side, which is really good.
Yeah, yeah. When you talk about helping on the bias side, I think the entire globe could benefit from that tool. So how can people get access to the Cambridge Code? If it's, you know, if you've found a way to break it down so that, you know, us common folk can get access at, you know, psychologist level support, how can folks get access at the Cambridge Code? What does the program look like? You know, how does it run?
Lots of different ways. So our website, I think there's podcasts, just we break down a couple of the domains that we look at so people can just listen to them. We wrote a book, never do that again. But we wrote a book to sort of distill some of our journeys to the layman, so that, you know, everyone can read it. It gives access to the code at the back, so each book gives you a personal access, so you can read about what we did, and in, you know, we tell stories there. You know, I always think that you know, when we're talking about teamwork and rivalry, and, you know, I love it when, you know, the brilliant psychotherapists I worked with to get me to really understand, they would say, listen, Curly, you know, if you've got two children in a running race, and you know, they run towards the line, and you know, the person with natural rivalry wins, then you might have the child who sticks their foot out to trip up someone who's getting close, you know, then you have the child who sees someone stumble, reaches out, gives them the hand, and helps them back up, you know, and you know, thinking about teamwork and rivalry in that way. So in that book, we try and give snapshots of very real examples, you know, whether you're a parent, whether, you know, whether you've been in trouble, you know, with the law, whether you are a husband, whether you're a partner. We've tried to give some, bring it alive for you. So that helps. The website helps corporates. There's a corporate product that we use where we use it as a developmental tool. So we allow people to see it, and then it stays with them on their journey through the organization.
Okay. So the Cambridge Code, folks, go check it out. Get the book, go to your local library, check it out, jump on Amazon, go get it, wherever you get your reading material, Audible, wherever you get your stuff, check it out. So now that leads me to this, because as we talk about the Cambridge Code and we talk about giving, you know, providing spaces for folks to take agency over their own lives and reach their best potential on a high level, as folks listen to this, and I know when I listen to things like this, I'm like, okay, well, how does it work for me? You know, how would that work for me? I hear these people talking about what they put together. How does it work for you? How did you get to a place where you began to take agency over your life?
Me on me, what fun. Well, a lot happens in our 0 to 18 years. You know, these are the years that most psychologists and psychotherapists agree on, that there's a journey from 0 to 18 years. You know, we're born as babies, helpless babies. We become troublesome toddlers. You know, we become grumpy adolescents. We become mature adults. There's this 0 to 18 years. That developmental axis is one that we did a lot of the work for the Cambridge Code on. So it's no surprise that those 0 to 18 years are probably quite important for me. So am the youngest child, so quite important sometimes where you are in the birth order. I'm the youngest of 4 very feisty Irish girls, and my siblings are 3 geniuses, and all have amazing careers. They were all at Oxford with me, doing much, much better. And so I basically must have striven to have my voice heard, which really brought out for me, when I did the Cambridge Code, one of the domains I flash on is that, you know, I have problems dealing with authority. You know, I have a, and I sort of embrace that, because there's a yin and a yang. So yes, I have problems dealing with authority, but it makes me an entrepreneur. So I hate being told what to do, but I'm great at running my own businesses. So everything has 2 sides. And, you know, that probably came because I was always fighting for my voice to be heard against my brilliant siblings. And that developed my drive. But probably because they were always trying to parent me, because that's what elder siblings do. It also means I've got an absolute horror of being told what to do. So, you know, those formative years were important to me. And made me sort of quite competitive, and a real desire to, I had a real interest in people, and you know, when I changed from being a medic to being a headhunter, everyone said, oh my gosh, they are such different things, you know, being a medic or a surgeon or, you know, psychiatrist. And I said, well, not really. You know, really good doctors, you know, the really good ones, they take your case history so well. They ask you all about you, when it started, your symptoms, you know, where it hurts, and they take the time to do that. You know, when I just got to a world where instead of saying, you know, where does it hurt, I say, well, how much do you earn? You know, but once again, it was all about taking a case history and listening to what makes people tick, which I just can't resist. Human beings are just so endlessly fascinating, and how we react with others. So, gosh, so privileged to stay in the world of seeing what makes people tick, and then having the fun of taking that one stage further to seeing what makes your subconscious mind tick. I think actually I'm just really nosy, Eldra. I think we should put it down to that, actually.
Okay, I know a lot of nosy people. I can be nosy, you know, a tad bit myself here and there. And I heard you speak about, you know, growing up with your siblings and the way that you all interacted with one another helped cultivate something in you where you had issues with authority. You had issues with, you know, folks telling you what to do. Does that show up in your world today, where maybe you interpret that someone is trying to tell you what to do, and it touches on that old piece from your growing up, and you respond or react in a particular way from that place?
It does. So, you know, it's a strong thing for me. And it's still, when someone tells me off, I get really defensive. I don't act like the grown-up I should be. It still catches me on the raw. I can now laugh at that a little bit, because I now know that this is where it comes from, and that there's real positives. You know, I can say, okay, possibly I'm really cross because they might have tried to tell me what to do, but maybe I could just accept that I get cross with that, you know, and live with the fact it's going on. But for example, I've never sold my business to someone. I would never want, you know, someone to tell me what to do in a shareholding or a board. I've always stayed as the boss and in control. So it's dictated what I've done with my life. But for me, I'm very comfortable with that, because I've accepted it and I love it. So it's got a positive there. But in your, you know, in your day-to-day, this sort of your movement as an adult through each day, you slide up and down your developmental axis all the time. You know, so if I walk into a room and I trip over as I walk in, you know, I will momentarily, from my resting adult state of mind, be thrown back to feeling like a slightly helpless toddler. You know, the ones who trip over in the street and never quite walk properly, but they hate having their hand held. They want to do it all themselves, whatever. But I'd have been thrown back to feeling a little bit helpless. But I'm fairly resilient. I would have bounced back to feeling like an adult, quite soon. I'd have apologized. But some people would have slipped down that developmental ladder, not as far as the toddler like I did, but to the grumpy adolescent in their life. And then it'd been like, well, it wasn't my fault I tripped, was it? There was a loose bit of carpet there. That's why I tripped. So different people, and that happens all day, all the time with us. And how quickly we come back to being our resting adult is what's important. So the little niggle for me when someone, tells me what to do and I don't want to be, I fall right back. And for me, it takes a little bit longer because for me, that's a bit of a raw point.
Yeah, yeah. And I can really, again, identify and appreciate what you're speaking about, because in the work that we do here, I'll use, an I statement. From the I perspective, there were plenty of times where situations arose for me and my 7-year-old responded or reacted, from a place of hurt, from a place of wounding, from decisions that the 7-year-old made. And I was, 16, 17, 18, 19, 35, 50. And that can be troubling. And again, with a lot of the people that I work with, it can be dangerous because oftentimes a defense mechanism kicks in and it's a matter of survival. And there's a mentality of you or me. Either you're going to walk away from this episode unscathed, or I'm going to walk away from this episode unscathed. So I'm very interested and very passionate about being able to, touch on those places more often and be aware of what those places are so that I can respond versus react. And supporting other folks, in finding that ability as well.
And for them to find that safe space, we talk a lot about the Cambridge shows about the internal scaffolding that you build up in your mind. And, depending on your genetics, how you've been brought up, that whole mix, the internal scaffolding of your subconscious mind. We all talk about, the immune system, and boy, do we talk about the immune system in current times, and how the fight or flight and how the body reacts. But we don't talk enough about the mind as an organ and how it responds in fight or flight. And your immune system, if it's prodded, will send off, T cells, whatever they are, and will fight. Well, your subconscious mind also, if you don't have the right internal scaffolding, you need to create some yourself. Vaccines create some more, immunity for us. Well, actually, if we understood that scaffolding might not be as sturdy, it might be a little bit rickety, this bit of your internal mind scaffolding isn't a safe place, but you could learn to put some, other blocks around that scaffolding in your mind. That can help when there's a fight or flight situation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Go ahead. You were getting ready to say something?
No. I was just sort of thinking, the everyone's safe places are very different.
Yes.
And everyone not needing to accept that our minds are mobile and moving. And if you have a broken arm, it gets looked after. Well, if a little bit of your subconscious has a break, well, that's not a bad thing. The mind should be talked about and how you can access it and help make it stronger and better. And you work out your muscles, well, work out your subconscious and understand it.
Yeah. And what just came to me when you were, speaking that last piece is, for those who may be listening here and those who may not be listening, the mental aspect of this, the mind aspect of this, because I run into a lot of people who we work with, we work like in the spiritual realm and on the emotional realm to try and create that safe space for folks to be able to get into and tap into where, those wounds may be. And a lot of people process mentally. They need to understand. it has to make sense to the brain. When you start getting into the body and that integral feeling, a lot of folks, they stiffen up and they run from that. They're not really ready to go to that place. But if there's a way to help them wrap their brain around it, that really serves them. So I really hope that, you know, a lot of people get exposed to this piece with the Cambridge Code in this particular episode, because the brain work and understanding things from that perspective really can be a gateway for a lot of folks.
Absolutely. And that's all what we wanted to do, was to give people, everyone, access to understanding their subconscious. This should not be, this most precious of things should not just be the preserve of people who could afford to have one-on-ones with psychotherapists, psychologists. Everyone should, you know, be able to look at their own authenticity. A lot of people in their lives go through with some barriers up because subconsciously they are worried that if they show their true selves, that it's not a good thing.
Yeah.
And they've learned that, and actually their true self is a joyous thing and it's a beautiful thing, but they have learned to, you know, put some barriers up and not stride forward. Well, sometimes once people know that and think, well, actually, my gosh, you know, I'm not at all overly competitive. I'm completely, but I've learned to think I am. You know, taking down that barrier and allowing someone to be their authentic self is really important.
Yeah. What's the biggest barrier you've had to take down?
Oh, the biggest barrier. The balance of being very driven, and you know, you can be very driven and that becoming overdrive. There's always a fine line between, you know, the brilliance and the psychotic, you know, moments away from, you know, from that. So for me, making sure that my inner drive doesn't become overdrive, so that I take people with me, and that I have a natural confidence, but that means that I don't always, you know, take help, which can be joyous, to go on a journey with others. And those are barriers that I'm still unpicking. Because the sum of many people can be much better than the sum of one.
Community can be a wonderful
precisely.
thing.
I will beat my elder sisters. There you go. Back to that. I will do it by myself.
Yeah. And as you said, that struck a chord with me, and a question that comes up for me is being driven and being in the world of medicine and being in the world of corporate environments and being a woman. How has that been for you? Being a woman in those environments, being driven, being strong, having a will, having agency, knowing what you want, and not being afraid to go for it. What has that experience been like?
Do you know, I'd never ever thought that being a woman has either held me back or helped me. I think being me is being me. I don't feel defined by being female.
Okay.
The only thing that I have found is that our voices aren't heard in the same way by men. So the way we talk and articulate is very different. It's when I interview lots and lots of wonderful women, and some who are just brilliant. They are so human at interview. They do just what I'm doing now, which luckily isn't a job interview, but it's, you know, it's fun, and they're warm and they're engaging, they're humorous, and that is deemed as not the right thing. And so I sometimes find that is the only thing I find sad. It's never held me back, but people should acknowledge it and talk about and celebrate the fact that we are different in those ways. And it's a good thing. It's just a thing, and it should be talked about. So I have to make myself heard in other ways sometimes.
Yeah.
You shouldn't really have to.
And that, you know, thank you for sharing that piece, because that's the sort of thing that I find often there are conversations that, in my humble opinion, need to be had, but we shy away from. There are things that are obvious, and, you know, for better or worse, they are truths about our society, but collectively we don't acknowledge them and we don't speak about them. And so long as we don't speak about them, we don't bring them to the table, then they will continue to affect, you know, people negatively or positively. And that's just not fair, in my opinion.
It's just not fair. You're right. We did a breakfast seminar with, and we had an amazing Paralympian athlete who's just fantastic. And she was talking about disability and recruitment. And one of my colleagues said the thing that none of us were daring to say, and she went, "We're all scared of getting it wrong when we're dealing with disabled people." And everyone was like, "Yeah, do you know, that actually is right?" And it was such fun to be able to talk about that honestly with her. And for her to be able to say, "Okay, let me tell you what it feels like, and let me tell you what is the wrong thing to be saying." And we had it on the table. It was really good.
Yeah. I'd love to be involved in something like that. If you have one, or if you can identify it, what does, in your line of work, and let's forget work, just in life, period, what does vulnerability look like for you?
I'm lucky enough to have kids, so I always feel very vulnerable as a parent. There's the anxiety to get it right, especially as I spent the last 5 years examining all the things you go through from 0 to 18. So I now really know the effects, you know, of my parenting skills or lack of them. So I feel slightly vulnerable when I'm, you know, looking at my kids thinking, "Oh my gosh, I've just yelled at one of them for doing something." That probably means that they are now going to conceal things about us. So slightly vulnerable on that side when you sort of see that. And I think slightly vulnerable because I really enjoy life. Life's really good fun. I love being with people, but I also think, gosh, you know, I could take this globally, or do I just, having created it and it's used, am I just going to sit with this, or am I going to challenge myself? And I sometimes think, woof, do I, or do I just be happy that we've done it? So I think I'm a little bit vulnerable on that.
So in that vulnerability and thinking about the things that you just mentioned, is there any fear attached to that?
Well, this was the two separate things. The fear of getting it wrong as a parent, I think, you know, everyone sort of, whether it's a parent or a partner, the impact you can have on others, you know, as a boss, as a friend. I have, you know, there's a fear that I could be more of a force for good in any of those things. I suppose the fear is that at times I'm not a force for good, and I should be. And on the suppose the fear of, I think I have a centered sense of self, actually. So the fact that I might not rule the world with this, or the fact that actually having invented something that can take a snapshot of the mind, that it might be another generation who does that, or it might be someone else, you know, I'm happy with that.
Yeah. Okay, so give me 3 things that you're proud of yourself for.
Oh, my 3 children.
Okay, we're going to count that as one thing.
Okay, I'm not allowed to cheat. That's one thing. Okay. I am hugely proud of having written the algorithm. Okay, we got lucky, you know, that I'm so proud that we've done something. You know, you look at a submarine, sorry, really long answer. You look at a submarine, and you're standing on an aircraft carrier, and they say, "We can see the submarine down there." And then you say, "Well, we can't actually see it, can we?" And we can say, "Yeah, but with the sonar, we can see the outline of the submarine." You know, that's what we've done. You know, we've got the aircraft carrier, and we say, "We can't see your subconscious mind yet, but we can see the outline of it with the questionnaire we've got that pings, and we read the radar that comes back. We can see the outline of your subconscious." So having done that radar of the mind, I'm hugely proud of that. And I am hugely proud of in my other day job as a headhunter, I'm hugely proud of the fact that I've trained over 320 graduates who have gone off and done different things throughout the world. We had them at their most precious time, and when they were very young, and I had the privilege of being their first sort of mentor. I'm very proud of them.
Congratulations for that, and thank you for sharing. And so now what I'm going to ask you to do is take a deep breath. Find yourself settled in your chair. Close your eyes.
It's really difficult being told what to do, Eldra. You now know my subconscious mind.
I'm not telling you what to do. This is an invitation.
An invitation. Okay, better. I can do
It's
that.
an invitation. Find yourself settled in your chair. I invite you to settle into your chair. I invite you to close your eyes. And I invite you to take a deep breath, one of those deep, deep belly breaths. Invite the oxygen into your body and feel it leave. Take another one of those breaths and feel it leave. And as you take this next breath, in your mind's eye, see 6-year-old Curly. And breathe with her. See her and let her see you. Having traveled the world the way that you have and experienced the things that you have experienced, what wisdom, if you could only impart one piece of wisdom to her, what wisdom would you give her?
Enjoy life to the full. Grasp it with both hands. There is nothing that you can't do. Have that confidence to stride forwards. Don't doubt yourself, and do it with humor and joy along the way.
Pearls of wisdom. Thank you for sharing.
Is all I can say, Eldra. And do you know how uncomfortable I was then? But I was able to bring out the picture of my 6-year-old barrel-like self with big purple ribbons and, cloudy horns.
Yeah. Well, thank you for accepting the invitation. Is there anything we haven't touched on today that you'd like to share with the folks?
No, for everyone listening, there is nothing out there that you can't do if you want to. And there is more to you than you think. There are glorious areas as yet untapped that you can reach into and access, which you don't know you have, which has been built up over all of these years and all your experiences. And if you reach into them, you can stride forward even more.
Thank you very much. Dr. Curly Moloney, folks, thank you for coming on. It's been an honor and a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you, Eldra. Thank you for having me. A real joy.